It's a crisp October 1999. You shouldn't be trick-or-treating this year, but you're sick of mom and dad telling you not to. So what do? You head to the thrift store, but not before you stop by your local cinema. And there's one movie particularly that catches your eye. A movie where a guy and a girl team up. There's some conflict, some deception.
Yeah.
And, they have to kind of unite and, take care of it all. And no, I'm not talking about Drive Me Crazy with Melissa Joan Hart.
I thought you were.
Wait, that's what I watched.
Yeah, I think we all watched the wrong movie.
We're talking about Princess Mononoke by Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli.
That's right. That actually is the movie I watched. That's a good thing.
Welcome to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where destiny brought together three friends to enhance each other's cinematic journey by watching three new movies in a series of themed rounds. There is no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode, as all film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy.
But hello and welcome to our very first live Three Films and a Podcast episode. This is live. Check your watch and your time. That's right. This is going on right now.
Whenever you watch this, we are sitting here doing this.
No, we're excited to be here. If you're new to the show, the tale we tell is that destiny just kind of, through movies, united the three of us and challenged us to compel each other to watch three new movies in a round format and expand our cinematic horizons. So that's what we've done. It started as a group chat. Now it is a podcast, and we're excited to have you. We wanted to establish and grow it into a movie club, and that's what we're attempting to do.
No, we're succeeding.
We've done it.
We are succeeding.
What does that little green guy say all the time? Do or do not, there is no try, right?
That little green guy.
That little green guy.
I was trying to I don't remember one.
Green guy. So if someone signed that in my yearbook in high school, I think I was a sophomore, and I'd never seen that. I think I'd seen Star Wars, but I didn't really remember it. I couldn't figure out what he was trying to say to me for the life of me. He just put it in there non sequitur, like, do or do not, there is no try. And I just the wordplay of it didn't make sense, and I didn't get it for the longest. I thought it was like some riddle or something.
My version of that is someone in my book wrote, "Don't get the clap." And I was like, I don't know what that is. I'm in ninth grade.
Don't do anything worthy of applause? What do you mean?
Yeah, it's I had no idea. I was I don't know. It's really cool.
Don't get clapped. Well, we're used to doing this remotely, so usually I'm saying, and we have Tyler in Portland.
But I'm here in Draper, Utah, along with
Ben. Also in Draper, Utah. I'm excited. This is our first in-person pod.
If you can't tell, we're not quite sure how to work this yet.
Yeah.
I'm Matt, also in Draper, Utah.
Yeah. Here we are.
We have a longtime friend of the pod, a guest who's been on here 6 times.
Correct.
Joining the Six Timers Club here, Joshua Johnston.
Thanks for having me back.
Creating the Six Timers Club.
Yeah.
Paving the way.
I thought it was 5, but 6 is awesome.
He's a trailblazer, but he wears a jazz hat.
That's true.
It reminds me of being in Portland.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Well, thanks for being here once again. We are covering Princess Mononoke. This round is actually going to be a Studio Ghibli round, specifically Hayao Miyazaki. There are a few films that aren't his from Studio Ghibli. But we wanted to cover, we try on this podcast to cover movies done by prolific directors, people who have contributed to film, and maybe you aren't exposed to it or we haven't been exposed to it. Those are kind of what we're trying to cover here. And so I chose Princess Mononoke because there are some particular recent pop culture things that have referenced or been inspired by it. And so I figured it'd be a good one to cover on here, point out some things that maybe you've seen that are from this movie that you didn't know, and hopefully get you to watch it. But I wanted to turn it over to you guys and just sort of hear your guys' initial thoughts and experiences with it.
So is this technically my round?
No, this was mine. I picked
okay.
Miyazaki because this was like a hole in my cinematic experience. Yeah. And that's why I was like, the only thing I had seen is My Neighbor Totoro, which I love. I think that's great. But I just knew that I don't know, there's like this like thing about Miyazaki that everyone loves him. And I think after watching a couple of these movies, like I understand it. I've never like connected to anime overall. Like that's never been something that I've really like, I don't know, looked for or anything like that. And I did like find that actually like with Howl's Moving Castle. I was like, I know it's beautiful and I can see that, but I'm just like, I don't know. It just wasn't like that part of it wasn't like hitting me, but I could objectively see like, this is beautiful. Yeah. Like what they're doing is great. This one really caught me off guard. Like just like someone getting like first the arms getting cut off by the arrows. And I was just like, holy shit. This is not My Neighbor Totoro.
Well, and in stark contrast to like a movie like Howl's Moving Castle, which I've already seen, that's coming up on the pod soon. That one's more seems more like kid centric. Yeah. And this one with, people being decapitated and some of the thematic elements. I was like, it's interesting that he makes movies that kind of do both, and it's like, they're all, they all look the same and they all kind of sound the same and feel the same, but he can steer them in certain directions.
Yeah. They definitely like lean into this one as far as like how gory and bloody things and then people getting maimed. Like it's almost like a Star Wars movie. Yeah. I mean, a lot more blood. Yeah. But, which is maybe why my son didn't want to watch it. But yeah, like aside from like, I probably have similar experiences to you guys. If you guys haven't been exposed to a lot of anime, I'm the same way aside from like Voltron when I was a kid. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I started hearing about Miyazaki and I was like, oh, okay, I'll check it out. And I think this was probably the first one I watched.
Same.
And yeah, blown away by the effects. And
it seems like Miyazaki's sort of like the gateway to anime for some people. He was for me. Yeah. I had a bunch of friends that were way into anime and they wanted to try to get me into it. And so this was the one they recommended. They said, well, you've got to watch Princess Mononoke. Yeah. Like anything Miyazaki, but watch Princess Mononoke. It's got Billy Bob Thornton in it. Yeah. I learned that on this watch because they made me watch
the English.
Yeah. So they made me watch the subbed version. So this is my first time watching the dubbed version. Oh, nice. But yeah, no, I absolutely loved this movie. And I've always wanted to watch more Miyazaki stuff. And so I'm glad we're finally doing it. That's why I was like, wait, was this my round?
Yeah. Well, it's also crazy because this is like the core of the pod, the roots of it, I guess, being me trying to watch 500 movies in 1 year. Yeah. That started like, that's what I picked for Miyazaki. It was like Totoro. I want to watch that. And so that's when I watched it. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I never watched anything else. I bought all like the Disney Blu-rays when they came out because that's when they were doing like the vault. And it's like, you never get them back. I was like, I gotta get all these. So like I own like 10 of his movies, but like I've never opened any of them, and I still haven't because now it's on HBO Max. So it's just like I don't know. I still haven't watched it.
Well, now there's resellable.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm glad we're doing this. Like this was a very specific choice for me. I'm like I need to give this a shot and see what I think about it. And so far, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like you guys, I am not well versed in anime. I can appreciate the animation in anime. Like some of the most insane animation.
Some of the scenes he built is unreal.
I mean, even just like across the genre. Yeah. But this was kind of like my first exposure. It was the first time that I felt like I saw something in Japanese animation that felt like it was for me. Right. Like, because I haven't really connected to any anime even after. But it's like, there's like a filmmaking element to this. Where
it's very cinematic.
Yeah, exactly. And so it felt like more, I don't know, I related to it a lot more. This round, so like looking closer at Miyazaki's work, and I know that like, I mean, some of us maybe don't have as many movies under our belt. I've seen most of them.
Utah.
Give me two.
There are a lot of as we watch these movies, you'll see there's like a lot of themes that are very similar. There's a lot of the aesthetic that's very similar. I mean, aside from his like animation style, that's obviously very apparent. But I kind of want to talk about the Miyazaki-isms in his movies and sort of speak to what people can expect, what they can point out in this movie that they can look forward to in subsequent movies.
I feel like since I have like the least to contribute on this, I'll just get mine out of the way, which is this to me is like the definition of like just a beautiful movie, like every frame, every frame of picture, because you could just watch this on mute and it's just like, man, it's so beautiful. The landscapes they're doing, and just like elevating like what Walt Disney did back in the day of like, let's have a painted background and then we'll do the cell animation on top of it. And they've just like made this even better, where it's like just a rich tapestry of like landscapes that all these people are like experiencing and existing on. And it's just kind of mind blowing. That's all just like artwork. It's all hand painted stuff. And I'm like, man, this is beautiful.
And even the way, and I know he's not the only person to do it as far as animation, but the way he builds in atmosphere with fog and clouds and rain and all that stuff, like it's so well done, and it's not heavy handed. It's very subtle. It seems very real and cinematic. It's almost like a cool acid trip or something.
Yeah, I was going to say it's quite psychedelic, but there is like something about his movies, this one and Spirited Away, that's very similar. Like the backgrounds, not only do they feel hand painted and all that stuff, but they're like alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they're moving.
That's a good
and they're breathing with you all the way through. And
it's like that scene in Midsommar when she takes the mushrooms and everything's just kind of like floating and stuff. It's like, this is a very alive.
Or like in Guardians of the Galaxy when they go through the top
or whatever,
it just starts breathing. It's like, this world is alive.
Yeah,
his world building is pretty phenomenal. For me, the thing I've noticed is the imaginative characters he builds, like the little, like in Princess Mononoke, the little sprites with the shaky clicker heads. I want to be that for Halloween.
Yeah.
I want to find a way to make it so you could like flick my chin and like shake, But like all those little characters and like his elk, I forget his name. What's the elk's name? My favorite character in the movie. I can't remember his name. That's not uncommon for me.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I love Jack Cool.
Cool.
It just looked really cool. The way he interacted with him was really cool. And having seen Howl's Moving Castle, there's a ton of really interesting characters, and like the apes, I think, were one of my favorite characters in this movie. The way they talk, their eyes, and just so for me it's just he creates just the most interesting little creatures.
The monsters for sure are like something that carry over in everything. He also, you'll notice, he has like a lot of environmental like sub messages. Like he speaks a lot to the environment. It's not uncommon in most cases. You're going to see like a lot of scenery where like the greenery has like overgrown like the man-made stuff, which is really cool. Like it's a total like aesthetic thing that I think is really awesome.
In sort of the same way, like his city scenes, they seem very lived in. Like there's sort of like a dinginess to them, and sort of they live in an industrial town. Or I'm actually confusing with Howl's Moving Castle right now, but like the Iron City. Like it looks a little dirty. It looks a little dingy. It looks like it's an Iron City, and that's pretty impressive.
And they keep bringing up the fact that these women are from brothels. Like,
exactly.
It's like, this is definitely not for the children.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, like it seems like they're really driving that point home. And they do overtly when they start maiming people. And
I did really like that scene though, when he goes in, he's like, pumping the air or whatever. He's like, oh, it's so easy. And they're like, oh, yeah, good. Do this for 4 days. That's what we do,
Like that's our
what?
shit. A 4-day shit.
Yeah, they're like, well, it's better than the brothel. I was like, yeah, I guess so.
Tourists, man.
He also like the towns and the places where he chooses to like have his story. He creates sort of like an intimate experience with those places. Very isolated, and you almost get the feeling that like you get to know everybody in that town. And everything important is going to happen like in that setting.
For sure. Makes me want to. I wish we could like travel to these places.
Right.
I wish there was like a Miyazaki corner of Disneyland or something.
There actually is an island, right? There's like an island in, I think, Japan or something that they base a lot of this area on.
If we get enough patron subscribers, three films trip 2022.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite complex, this movie, but I didn't feel like I didn't know anyone in the movie.
Yeah,
that's true.
My first viewing of the movie, I was pretty bewildered with what was going on with it. I mean, the environmental message with it is there, but it's like I was kind of, in some ways, I think I was kind of confused about what the overall message was because of how outstanding just everything about it was.
It's funny because I don't remember being confused the first time I watched it. Yeah. I also didn't remember what happened in the movie. I just knew I loved it and it looked cool. But watching it this time, I was actually more like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
And I like that, Ashitaka sort of plays the middle, but not in a passive way. He sort of picks the right lane for the moment.
He's like being a steward for each side.
It was sort of hard to follow. Like, wait, I thought he was at war with I thought these guys. I was a little confused at times, but I had like the opposite experience as you. I think I understand what happens, but
now I feel like I understand.
Yeah,
but my first viewing, I was just kind of blown away by what I was seeing. I was like, this is awesome. This is awesome too.
Well, and like you're used to having like just like black and white like bad guys, and like he's like fighting alongside like two people that could be bad, but they are bad to each other, but like they're also good.
That's a theme I'm noticing. Like Howl's Moving Castle deals with that, and obviously we'll talk about that later. But maybe that's a pretty good Miyazaki-ism. It's like he doesn't just paint anyone with the broad brush like that. Everyone's complex and realized.
That's probably what I like.
There's a lot of nuance
about it too.
Yeah.
I'm curious as like for someone who's fluent in Japanese to watch this, because my understanding is like some of the like folklore that's told in here just doesn't like translate to English.
Yeah.
So maybe the dub version is like, wait, why are they doing this? But like if you understand the history of it, or even, just at one point understanding Portuguese and reading it and like seeing what it translated to is like, oh, that's not like, I get what they were going for, but that's not exactly what that is. And I feel like some of that has to happen in the dub.
For sure. And it's almost like they almost have to change the way that they speak it in English to sort of match the length of time it takes to speak in Japanese, whether it's shorter or longer. Because I remember watching the subbed version and I loved like the poetry of it, even though I'm just reading it and hearing the Japanese language. But this time I found the dialogue to be a little clunky. And also, I was really thrown off by Billy Bob Thornton. I couldn't get past that. I love Billy Bob, but I was just like, and I remember loving that character. Please, Billy, Mr. Bob. I remember loving that character, and I still liked him this time around. I think he's a cool character, but I just was like, it's Billy Bob fucking Thornton. I don't know, but
that ain't no Sling Blade.
But like, I just remember it being
like it though. Like he
was coming off the heels of Sling Blade, I think, in this time, and that's why he was probably chosen to do
that. Makes sense.
Interesting.
But his seemed like the least.
He just won that Oscar.
Yeah,
not too long before that.
That's why they wanted him. I'm sure.
And it really sort of seemed like he was mailing it in a little bit.
Oh, 100%.
Just a little mailing it in.
He just showed up.
3 takes.
All right, here's my lines. Got it. I don't know.
I've never seen it with the original dubbing of it, and I will at some point.
I feel like you almost have to watch these twice. Watch it dubbed so you know what's going on, and then watch it subbed to get like the poetry of the language.
I usually won't watch a foreign movie with like the English subs because it ruins it.
Yeah,
it usually ruins it. Yeah. But I was looking at the voice cast and I was like, oh, this might be good.
Yeah, and they do a good job. I actually watched, again, stepping on Howl's. I watched that with my mom, and she's like, I thought they did really good. Maybe I'm just too critical, but. Yeah,
I liked him in Howl's, but Billy Bob. I think most people are really good in this too. But he just
they do a good
walked
job,
into the studio. He's like, "All right, cool. Show me my lines." Like, I don't know.
That's awesome. So we like to do a segment on here called the elevator pitch, where essentially we isolate maybe the one scene. If we had one scene that we had to show anybody, to show you in the movie, what would it be to convince you to watch this movie? And so I'm curious what your guys' elevator pitch for this movie would be.
You talked about like I called it the postcard sequence, and like I can't remember the exact verbiage you used earlier, but when he's leaving to go on his quest, and we just get those giant sweeping panoramic views of him riding his elk, whose name I can't remember again. Yeah, cool. That's gonna keep happening. I just was like, and I was stone cold sober too, And I'm just like, it was just so beautiful. I was really swept up. I actually rewound it. I was like, this is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And so I think I would show that just to like let you know, like it's gonna be this beautiful the whole way through, and it's gonna be this cool. And I might include some of the opening battle so you can see how cool Ashitaki is.
That's just what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The battle, the opening battle is so amazing. Cool. Like it gets you right away.
You're hooked.
In.
Like this guy's a badass.
At the end, like You pathetic small people.
Dude, the voice too on the what was the wild boar's
Okoro,
name?
I think.
Yeah, Keith David. Is that?
Yeah, Keith David did the voice. I think it was Okoro's. Akoto. Akoto.
Yeah.
I liked how they did the animal voices a lot with like, especially like the Moro, the wolf, with it had like a male undertone, like when she would speak, there was like a male low tone beneath it, like a growling sound to it. I thought it was really cool. And the apes had sort of a similar quality to it. I just loved the animal sounds.
Yeah.
I remember like that character in the Japanese version is done by like a trans celebrity, you know, so that's why they kind of like kept just like did a lower voice with this one. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool decision that they continued that. Mine is just that, the attack on the side of the mountain. I thought that was really cool. That first time that we meet San, you know, I thought like that's what I would show. I think for me, that's when I was just like, I don't know, the opening battle, everything was great, but that's for me. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm here. I'm in it. Like, let's go.
That's when we meet the wolves at the first time too,
exactly.
right?
They both come in. Yeah.
So the one that I would show, and it's the reason I actually chose this, was the episode. If for those of you viewers who have watched The Mandalorian, and I know it's against the rules to talk about TV, we're going to make an exception right now.
We make them, we break them.
We've never
break the rules.
But there's the episode of Mandalorian where Ahsoka is, outside the town, and she's going to go in and infiltrate, and then she has that duel with I don't recall.
So awesome.
Yeah.
I'm the last person to ask whose name anyone is.
I'm like the Star Wars guy, and I can't think of
Ahsoka is like one of my favorite characters.
Oh, she's so cool. Anyway, that whole scene was like inspired by this San?
Yeah.
Just making sure I'm saying her name right. Yeah, San's infiltration on the city. The
no
city,
kidding.
And then her duel with the Lady Eboshi. And so that scene, not only is it like very heavily influenced by Kurosawa, which we'll also cover later on, but you can just see the parallels between that episode and what you see in that like standoff in the Iron City.
Yeah,
which is super cool.
I don't remember that episode of The Mandalorian very well, but I'm gonna go watch back and rewatch it because that's awesome.
Well, after watching this, you'll be like, oh yeah.
Okay, cool, nice.
Like all the rooftop stuff and like just infiltrating the city.
Is that in season 1?
Season 2.
Okay, that's the season I like the most. You'd think I'd remember, but.
Played by the same actress.
This is why we don't cover TV. Characters.
Okay, back to the rules.
Back to the film. So we'll jump into some 3 films trivia. In doing your guys' research or like reading over Wikipedia, was there anything that you're surprised at, or that you learned, or that you want to share with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it already, but like I said, my buddies that showed me this movie in the first place, they wouldn't let me watch the dubs. They made me watch the subs, and I'm glad they did. Because again, I really, I don't mind. I usually watch everything subbed. But anyways, I was just surprised to hear the voices. Yeah. And when Billy Bob popped up, I was like, is that Billy Bob's voice? And it took me a minute, and I actually had to like IMDb it to make sure I wasn't going crazy. So that I didn't I didn't really get into much trivia on this movie, but for me, just the surprise of having these big American actors. I didn't know that they'd worked with Disney to produce this movie. I didn't know any of that stuff. So I guess just all of like the American production of it surprised me. Yeah. I was expecting and sort of actually hoping for like English speaking Japanese actors to do the dubs. That was my hope. And I don't hate what we got, but yeah, right. I know we're a little too early. We weren't that progressive yet, but that was the thing that surprised me the most for sure.
I think I was surprised that like an anime was at one point the highest grossing movie in Japan.
Yeah.
This was up there, and then like every other movie in the world got dethroned by Titanic because that's just what's going to happen. But then Titanic got dethroned by Spirited Away. So I don't know right now what the highest grossing is, especially like adjusting for inflation and everything. But I don't know, it's kind of cool to think about, this was like so popular over there that this was like the #1 highest grossing movie of all time at one point. Like it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe we had that with like, is that us and Pixar? Is it America and Pixar where it's just like, I don't know, like Toy Story like brings in all this money, you know what I mean? Like I guess again, like I'm just showing my like not like lack of understanding about anime and stuff, but I feel like it's got to be obviously huge over there. It's
Studio Ghibli is their Pixar, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
You know better, leave it in the comments.
Please do. We're here to learn.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big here. Depending on who you are, I guess. I mean, my wife, who's from Mexico, like she was huge in anime and stuff, but Studio Ghibli films are kind of a blank spot in her repertoire for some weird reason.
Interesting.
Maybe because it's not like, again, coming from ignorance, maybe because it's not like the traditional anime. Yeah, it's a little more somatic.
Yeah, it's really kind of interesting though, like with the boundaries that they kind of push in, even in like Dragon Ball Z, for instance. Like there's a lot of like overt sexuality, overt some racism in it, even like some of the older stuff. So with this one, Princess Mononoke, I think this is a very progressive film. It's talking about the environment in 1997.
Strong female leads. And strong female characters throughout, not just the lead. Like there's some really very well realized and actualized female characters. Even the women from the brothels, like you sort of get to know them and you get to know their story a little bit. Yeah, which we still don't get all the time in American movies, or you know, like yeah. I can see what you mean by like they're maybe it's just their cultural norms or such that they have the ability to push those boundaries or something. I don't know, but it is, you know, from what I know about it and from what I hear about it and like what you're saying, yeah, it does seem like there are some boundaries that are pushed.
Yeah.
That we don't necessarily push all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Iron City alone just has like is very themey.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they're the harder workers, you know, just across the board. You have the lepers and they're like being tended to. Yeah. You have Lady Eboshi, who's like basically the ruler of the town, will do anything at any cost, you know, protect them and help them. And so that's, yeah.
I saw a lot of parallels with like Wakanda and Black Panther and stuff. And it was like, it took us until 2019 or whenever that movie came out to get a movie like that where like, you know, you have the king, and in Princess Mononoke, there's no king in Iron City, but you know, we have the Chitauri, right? Is the female guard in
Dora Milaje.
Dora Milaje, that's right. The Chitauri is something else.
They're the aliens from First Avengers.
I don't know stuff. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like it took us forever to get that, and it was such a big deal, and I thought it was so cool, and everyone thinks it's so cool, and it is. But here we have Princess Mononoke that's like, and this is adapted from like some sort of text, some sort of Japanese story, right? Like
I think so.
There's different things that they pulled from, but they didn't overtly.
Oh, okay.
Like the way I kind of listened to some different stories about how they made this on the way out, and the guy was saying that yes, they have folklore about the wolves and these and that, but he changes it just enough so it's like, no, this is a Miyazaki character.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So yes, he is pulling from folklore, and he is pulling from like some of those old legends, the gods and, you know, the deities and stuff like that. But
I just can't help but thinking like we're going to talk about our favorite animated films coming up here pretty soon, but it turns out I love animated movies. I didn't realize until I started thinking about it for this pod, but I was like, man, I have a lot of favorite movies that I can't really whittle it down. And I'm like, I can't, it's such a shame that it took me so long to get to a point where a movie like this, or, you know, any other Japanese movie or any other culture's contribution to media, that took me so long to like get to know them, because these are incredible. You know, it's, I wish and I hope, and I think it's getting to be the point where like your kids and whoever, you know, like the younger generations are going to be exposed to this much easier than it was for me to watch it at my friend's house because he just happened to have the DVD. You know what I mean? Now you can just click on HBO Max and see it. Yeah. You could stumble on Princess Mononoke in a way that you couldn't before. And I think that's great, but it's kind of sad that it's taken so long, because like we're talking about, it's coming from this folklore that's existed. We're working on a theme of representation here with the podcast, the choices we're making. And that's great. And that's what I think it seems to be the case that like society and pop culture is trying to do, is be more representative. And we're still not great about it. But there's been so many stories and so many pieces of media that are out there that are inclusive and are representative that we could expose ourselves to and don't or can't. And at least it's getting better. And that's a tangent, but it's just like, I just was struck like, man, I wish like kids were watching Howl's Moving Castle the same way that they watch like The Lion King or whatever, because the stories are a little bit more complex and they're not quite so good and evil and bad versus good. It's more nuanced. And I think it would be good for anyone
you see
to
just a different way of life.
Right.
My kids love Totoro, and I think we'll cover that too, but it's like the houses are different, the villages are different, the dynamics are way different. And so it's nice to like sort of get that cultural exposure out there that like, I mean, none of the Disney shows really show.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're kind of getting there maybe in a slower way. I mean, when you look at like what Marvel's doing and the way that they're bringing up their representation and the movies that they're putting out, like Shang-Chi and some of these other movies, I feel like they're getting there.
Yeah, they're trying. Not to take credit away from these properties that are trying, but like
they start with Coco and Moana,
and they're incredible. Yeah. I'm not taking that away.
I feel like it's definitely geared towards financial things. Like they're measuring what's commercially going to work.
But
this is what society is leaning towards, and that's why it's commercially working.
Sure.
Well, that's why even just like in the industry side, we had like the Oscars So White like 5 years ago or whatever. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, these are all just like 70-year-old white guys who are voting on this. Like, of course, Black Panther isn't going to win anything or whatever. So then they like course corrected and brought in a lot more people and a lot more diversity. And I think now we're finally seeing like the fact that Parasite won, I think, was a testament to the fact that it's not just 70-year-old white guys who are voting on these things anymore.
Watch it, and everyone who watched it loved that movie, but no one had heard of it until like it got a little bit of recognition.
Yeah.
And now it's like, and now it's to a point where like a show like Squid Game is dominating Netflix. I'm on episode 1. Spoiler alert. Please don't let me know.
Pop culture is just
but like, so I walked into I'm staying with my parents right now, and I walked into my dad watching Squid Game, and it's not that he wouldn't have been interested. He loves that kind of story, but he never would have sought it out. And frankly, neither would have I. But now that it's on Netflix, and I don't think that would have happened without the success of Parasite. And even going back, like Adam Palcher showed me Old Boy.
Yeah.
And like,
Old Boy's amazing.
So like movies like that sort of started to seep into like, you'd hear talk about Old Boy, and then years later Parasite dominates and it wins. And it's one of my favorite movies of the last few years we've watched. Yeah. And then now it's I'll walk into my dad watching Squid Game. And that like, he never would have seen a story like that. Not that he's opposed to watching it. He just never would have been exposed to it.
Well, and to Ben's point, like you mentioned like a Japanese voice cast, even for the English dub. And we're just a few years detached from, speaking of anime, like white people being cast in Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like in a real life movie. Like, It's like, it's crazy. It's like, oh, Ghost in the Shell, give me ScarJo. That's what we need for this. Like,
love ScarJo with no shade. Like and subscribe. Yeah, Scarlett, my girl.
But I think we also like fell into like a happy accident, not to keep talking about this, but one last point, Apu trilogy. I think between the three of us, that's become like one of our favorite things that we watched. And that really was like a happy accident, because we were talking before a pod, I think. And I was like, I haven't seen all the Indiana Jones. Like, I don't know. And then I was like turned to my left and I had like my Criterion movies there. It's like, man, I bought this Apu trilogy like 6 years ago or something, and it's still in the plastic wrap. I was like, I don't know if this will be good, but I feel like we should give it a shot. And it's just like one of those things. It's like, oh, man, I wish I had like heard about this a long time ago, because it's different cultures, but the stories connect to everybody.
Yeah, it's universal for sure.
Been a kid, been an adolescent, whatever. It's like, it's just nice now that it's not just white guys making the decisions. Mm-hmm. So I get to see this stuff, like even just as we talked about with Candyman recently, like we get some representation on screen and some, people of color behind the camera, which is great. It's not like a white person telling the story, like going back to our first episode, Do the Right Thing, where it wasn't like Spike Lee originally,
Yeah.
Or was it Malcolm X? Malcolm X, I think, but it wasn't supposed to be.
Oh, it was
Spike
Oliver
Lee.
Stone was supposed to direct.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And then it's like, no, I need to do this. So I don't know.
Yeah, and it's really weird because I mean, even like speaking, personally, it took me reaching out to you to start this movie club and bringing you in and starting this podcast and starting to think about the movies and the content we were putting out and the message we were putting out. It took all of that for me, even personally, to think about representation. And I only say that because I think there is a certain point where it's a conscious choice, and it's unfortunate that it is, but I think and I hope that it's getting to the point where more people are making that conscious choice.
For sure.
And I think that's, for me personally, that's why we're trying to do this, and we're trying to think in this sort of way, because like you just said, the Apu trilogy is one of my favorite things I watched all last year in season 1 of this podcast.
Yeah.
And it never would have happened. And it fits the theme of this podcast perfectly. And it was such an easy decision to make, and we're all so much better for it. Yeah. And I just hope that people can start making those decisions in the same way.
Yeah, I think we just didn't notice it till it was like we were nominating our best performances by a female.
And that's what I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Choose from. Yeah. But it wasn't a decision, like a conscious decision on our part. Like, I only want to watch guy movies, but we each picked a director, and it's Spielberg, Hitchcock, and Kubrick. It's like, yeah, but it wasn't meant to be like, I only want to talk about white guys. Like, I don't know, these are like some of the biggest, but that's because at the time they were the one that were given the money. They were given like the ability to do this. So unfortunately, that's what we have a lot of. But I think when we were able to like look at that and realize, like what we may have unconsciously done or chosen, is like, okay, then let's consciously kind of fix this. And I mean, our first, 3 rounds of next year, just like they were very specifically chosen around that idea, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, super. And it's like you said, those were the people that were able to make the movies, and those were the ones that we were able to have access to. But it's also the ones that are always talked about. Yeah. And I just hope there's a snowball effect, not just because of this podcast, but I just mean like in general. Yeah. And I just hope, and again, I'm speaking just personally, I just hope that people can make that switch in their brain. For sure. Because it's so easy to just go watch New Girl again. I'm probably going to very soon here. As soon as I get through Community. But I don't know. We're kind of going in circles here, but it's just something I'm personally proud of, and I'm glad that we're doing. And I think it's really important, and it's been really fun, and we've seen some really cool stuff.
Agreed.
There's a lot of great art worldwide.
For sure.
It's just important to try to expose yourself to it. And luckily now it's just much more available to people now.
Yeah. That's a huge benefit.
One of the good things the internet's done. Yeah. There's bad things too.
I mean, before we move on, I just remember thinking when we were doing the Spike Lee round, like we could name, dozens of white male actors. Sure. Like the list just goes on. Like we could rank them.
Well, you might be able to. I can't name things, but
you'd be able to. The list gets shorter.
Adam Driver.
I'm sorry. Takes the top 10.
Yeah. No shade, Adam Driver.
The list gets shorter with women. Then the list gets even shorter. If you were to ask them to name like their top 10 favorite like black actors or Latino actors, it's like, can they name 10?
That's easy. Rosie Perez.
Rosie Perez 10 times.
No, seriously.
Like Asian actors. It's
no, but I agree, and I'm one of those. I don't know if I could.
Well, so that's why like watching these movies and like the representation that they are starting to do in Hollywood does matter, because like a lot of the people that have become like some of my favorite actors I look forward to, like I didn't even know like a year ago. Yeah. And then I'm recognizing them in things that they've been in since like 2008. And it's like, how come I never knew their name until now?
Yeah, that was one of the comments that stuck out to me the most after we did our rom-com draft. Someone shared like their thoughts, which I'm glad they did, but they're like, not one of you guys picked a movie that had 2 people of color falling in love with each other. It's like, oh shit. Yeah, I guess that's true. Like I never thought about it, but there just wasn't. But again, unfortunately, number one, that just shows like, I'll speak for myself, but my like lack of like exposure to that kind of stuff, like, and I just haven't like made myself, see that. Like I haven't taken the time to like expose myself to that kind of like cinema. Unfortunately, you're just stuck with the When Harry Met Sally's and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then when they mention that too, but it's also just the fact that it's like, at the very least, it's got to be 10-1 for like 2 white leads, versus 2 people of colors leads in a rom-com. And that's like, I feel like that's generous. It's probably more like 50-1. Yeah. Like that's just kind of what it was. So I think I'm just We can stop after this.
No, we can't. No.
Essentially, it's just like
it's something that Alex and I talk about a lot. It's the difference between not being a racist and being actively anti-racist, and that's the sort of mental switch that I'm personally trying to do. Because I remember we were talking about it in the Spike Lee round. We talked about being allies and stuff, right? And I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, what does that mean for me? And for me, it's making decisions like this and trying to expose myself to other stories and other cultures, and also being vocal about it in the way that I can. And, you know, not trying to be like antagonistic to people or trying to cause fights or cause problems, but to make a comment like that, for that person to call us out like that. That's the kind of stuff that we need to start doing. Yeah,
being receptive to something that maybe just needs a change, and not take it internally as, I'm being the racist. Yeah. You just say, you need representation.
Yeah.
And you should have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's right.
Exactly. They weren't attacking us. They were like enlightening us or whatever. Yeah. Like, hey, maybe like think about this.
It's okay that your top 10 favorite actors are all white, but maybe think about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Right. Absolutely.
What's the bigger picture? Yeah.
So I guess getting back into like the trivia of this before we move on to the last or one of the last questions is I was shocked at the American production company that wanted to bring this project on wanted to cut a ton from it. They wanted it trimmed down a ton, and like I was just thinking about that, like from an animation standpoint, like when you're a film director, like it's very easy to film too much, film excess. It's got to be a lot harder to animate too much, I imagine.
Can you imagine spending months animating the apes and or whatever?
It's like, cut this sequence out. Yeah. It's like, okay, why?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting.
You should play that Patton Oswalt joke about film editors and versus film directors. How an editor's always a woman cleaning up after a man's mess.
I remember that.
Such a good.
It is. Yeah.
Roll the clip.
Quentin Tarantino's editor. Yeah, that's right.
Because that's how, look, those are the two. It's a dude with his camera dick just pointing it everywhere. I'm just shooting fucking film. Oh my God, just 18 miles of it. Look at this fucking, every frame is a painting. Then the woman's got to show up. We all done, sweetie? Okay. Out you go. I got to make a story out of this mess.
Now it's time for our Adam Driver drive-in feature, where we pair this movie with another movie that we feel like it pairs well with, that you enjoy as a double feature.
I would probably start, if you're going to take the children, you're going to keep it animated.
The Witch.
The Witch. Yeah, I would probably start with another kind of a movie about environment, but maybe easier for the children to swallow. WALL-E would be a good one to start it with, and then once they fall asleep, you roll into Princess Mononoke.
Yeah,
I think it's a great call.
At first it was really hard for me not to pair this with Fellowship of the Rings. Just as I started watching it, it reminded me of when he goes out on his own. It reminded me of Frodo going out and leaving the Shire and going on his quest. So I thought maybe pairing it with the old animated Hobbit I used to love watching as a kid. But now as we've been talking about this and some of the themes of this, I think I might pair it with Fern Gully.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just some of the environmental talk. And that's such a really, really cool animation and some really good voice work. Better voice work, in my opinion, than the dubbed version I watched.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that everyone did a bad job, but, dubbing's hard.
Williams.
Does Fern Gully have Billy Bob Thornton in it?
I hope so. I really hope so.
It does have Tim Curry, though, right? I think so. He plays like the big smog thing, whatever. Let's see. When I was watching this, mainly the part when Ashitaka goes into the Iron Town reminded me a lot of Yojimbo, the Kurosawa film, which I think we might be talking about later on. But yeah, just like, coming into a town, kind of getting adopted by the town, and they like in a way fall in love with him, and he helps them out, but he's also helping out someone else. And I just got a lot of the similar kind of themes from that. I'd probably show it after, so if the adults wanted to watch it, like, you could make the connection. It's definitely, there's just parallels there. I wouldn't say they're the same film, but that was the thing that really stuck out to me. Like, I feel like I'd be like hard pressed to like be persuaded that this isn't an inspiration, at least a little bit, the Yojimbo story. So that's kind of what I would go with.
That mediator type of character.
Yeah, exactly.
Between two different tribes.
100%.
Yeah, I changed my answer a few times, and I'm landing on Moana.
I think that's perfect.
It's not as much themey on like the environment, but there is like that. I mean, it resolves with her like it's a misunderstanding of like Te Fiti and like sort of restoring things to the way they should be, and that's like a huge thing in this movie.
Fighting some demons and some cool big, the big crabs kind of reminds me of the big boar, like
and like those coconut warriors on the water.
Totally. That's
some similarities there. Be my pairing. Moving on to our Rushmore Mountain, and now that we've had this conversation, I'm lamenting that we don't have Billy Bob voiceover.
Rushmore, the Billy Bob Rushmore.
He's got to have done more than just this for like voice work.
Well, you keep talking and I'll start looking.
These are OR scrubs. Oh, are they?
Yeah, the Rushmore of animation, though. I would, pick a different Miyazaki movie because it was my favorite, Spirited Away. Have you guys ever seen The Animatrix?
I did.
I actually have.
I really enjoyed that.
Shorts, right?
Yeah. And there's one in particular that I really, really like. And then I'm always a sucker for like the animated Halloween cartoons. I mean, we're in the season right now.
This is the season.
I like The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
I know there's nothing super complex about it, but for its simplicity and the music and stuff, it's always a favorite in my house.
I think you love all those holiday ones together, like Thanksgiving and Christmas. All that, like the Peanuts holidays movies are so good.
I mean, I watch them all the time. Once the holidays roll around, I try to limit it to that, and then The Nightmare Before Christmas. Those are the ones I could really like remember.
Yeah.
When we brought it up.
Yeah.
Cool. I went the Tyler Beck route on this, where I just went with the first stuff I thought of that stuck out to me. I've talked about it before, but like I have a affinity for Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yep.
And just like stop motion animation, like all that stuff just blows my mind. Like, even if you don't like Coraline, I don't know who wouldn't. Like, it's a fun movie, but it's like you just got to respect the craft that goes into it. Like, it's just so good. It's like not liking a certain type of food, but it's like you got to understand though, like what this chef's doing is amazing. That kind of a thing. Coco, which kind of got brought up earlier, like that's
Coco was amazing.
That was between that and Nemo for me, because Finding Nemo for me is still like up there for one of the most beautiful Pixar movies ever, but I didn't think anything could beat it. And then Coco came out and I was like, oh my God, this was like amazing. And yeah, they've had like time and whatever. I still think what Finding Nemo did for when it came out is insane. It's still like such a beautiful movie, but I'm going to go with Coco. My favorite movie growing up as a kid, Peter Pan. I just love that animation. There might be some troublesome stuff in there, like
read the disclaimer on Disney Plus.
Yeah. And then you can find out what makes the red man red. And then another favorite growing up was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I think it's kind of like it's animated. It's it's whatever it was at the time, but I love that. Like,
so does Evil Dead and Army of Darkness.
Yeah, that's true. I did not put that on here, but I love Roger Rabbit, and even then, just like the crossover of like Disney and Warner Brothers, like letting all of their characters merge was just kind of crazy. I don't know that we're ever going to get anything like that again until Disney buys every single company and person and everything. So. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Disney.
Disney
We can be bought for sure.
Yeah, speaking of Disney, kind of like you were saying, I usually just go with the first one that pops in my head. And so I actually changed my answer because I was like, he's right. I should just do the first thing that popped in my head. The first one that popped in my head was Ratatouille. I've always loved that movie.
That's a great one.
I had written down Moana. I also had written down Coco at one point. And I thought about Finding Nemo. I almost just wrote Pixar.
Yeah.
But that's just a cop-out. So the first one that popped in my head is Ratatouille. I mentioned Patton Oswalt earlier. I love Patton. And I just love the scene when Anton Ego eats the ratatouille and flashes back to his childhood. Yeah. Just really incredible. Makes me cry every time.
That zoom that we get, it was just like,
it's just so good. Yeah. Princess Mononoke has, ever since I watched it, has been in my head, so it's got to be on my list. Spider-Verse is one of my favorite movies I've seen in the last long time. And there's an old cartoon that I don't even know where you can find it. I used to watch it at my grandparents' house when I'd go down there. It's called Flight of the Dragons. I think that's what it's called. Heavy disclaimer here. That might not be the name of it.
If you know anything about this movie, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's basically cartoon dragons fighting. And when I was a kid, I loved it. I watched it all the time.
Pretty solid.
So that may or may not be the name of it, but
that's How to Train Your Dragon?
It wasn't. It was way earlier than that.
Dragon Slayer?
That might be it. I don't know. I remember it being called Flight of the Dragons.
Dragonheart with Sean Connery, maybe?
I think it might have been Dragonheart with Sean
Connery. Mine, similar to Josh, like I love all of Miyazaki's movies that I've seen. I am particular to Spirited Away. I love that movie. Similarly, I love Spider-Verse. I think the animation in that is just amazing, and I love Spider-Man. Disney, I gotta go with Lion King. It's easily one of my favorite animated movies of all time. And then I knocked one of mine off and I threw up Kubo.
Nice.
Kubo was super cool.
That is a really good one.
Super great animation, like a lot of symbolism throughout. Like they just weave that story so well, and very, very cool. The one I knocked off, which I'll give the honorable mention, is Fantasia, which I'm going to get hate mail for. People hate that answer. You probably
Where are they going to mail it to? Email or snail mail?
Snail mail.
Yeah.
Just fax it.
He's animating the music,
Telegram.
And that last animated sequence in that movie is just awesome.
It's a game changer movie.
Haven't watched it in a long time because when I was a kid, I didn't like it. I didn't get it.
It's a tough watch.
Yeah.
It's a tough watch, but if you appreciate what they were able to do at that time, and just like the quality of animation for that time, it's like awesome.
Yeah. I'll have to give it another watch for sure.
It's Gershwin music with that, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I remember liking the scene of Mickey wearing the wizard hat mopping,
Apprentice,
like the dancing mop or whatever. I used to remember liking that scene, but that's about all I remember from it as a kid.
I think it's just like it's another movie. It's kind of like in the context. Like now, you show it to kids, they may not be as like blown away by it.
Maybe a good category or a good nominee for Second Chances round.
It's true. That might be coming up. We'll see.
Maybe. Stay tuned.
What a combo that would be. Fantasia.
Try and forget you heard that.
Yeah, cut that out. I'm going to bleep us right there so people don't know what I said. Before we wrap up, I just you hit on this trivia a little bit before, but I just want to give the full context of the story because I think it's hilarious. It was Harvey Weinstein who had obtained the rights to North American distribution, and he wanted stuff cut out, and they didn't want to do it, obviously. And one of the producers, so Miyazaki angrily left the meeting, and then one of the producers sent Weinstein a katana and just I guess in all caps just said no cuts on a piece of paper.
They didn't send him a horse head?
They should have. That was the second thing, Yeah, no horsing around.
It was the head of the spirit that they
the forest spirit. Yeah, spoiler alert.
But I just like that Miyazaki when people asked him about it, he's like, I defeated him. That's kind of cool because we had a similar story. I forget exactly which movie. I believe it was The Host, but Harvey wanted Bong to he's like, why are you making a movie about whatever this guy that does that? And he's like, my father did that for a living. He's like, all right, go ahead. And they left me. He's like, my father did not do that for a living. I just I needed Weinstein to sign off on it. So Bong was just like, oh, this is really sentimental to me. This is what my father did. And he just told some interviewers no, he didn't do that. I just wanted to make this movie. It's great. I like when people can play Harvey Weinstein.
Hot take here, Steve. Cover your ears. Harvey Weinstein, go fuck yourself. From 3 Films Pod. Sorry, boys. We just lost our sponsorship.
Subscribe.
Do not like and subscribe.
You can cut that if you choose, but I stand by it.
Promo. Let's find out what Tyler said.
What was your guys' favorite?
The finger and
What was your favorite creature in this movie?
I mean,
you have to pick one. You have to pick one favorite creature.
I mean, it would have been my answer if you hadn't mentioned them, but those little white dudes,
Yeah.
like those were like the coolest things out there. Like,
I gotta go
I love those.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Cool's great.
I was so sad when he got shot. I thought he was going to die. I couldn't remember. I was like, did they fucking kill Cool?
We don't know what happens.
I know.
I think if you're listening to this pod, you probably
Even
know
though
that.
this pod started out thinking we spoil everything. Yes.
I mean, I would say any one of those characters, but I mean the forest spirit is awesome to me.
Cool.
The transformation, and
I love when he walks on water and everything.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
when he gets shot and he sinks a little bit.
That's what I remember from the trailer too. Is just when he's walking, and then the foliage just like grows underneath.
Yeah.
And I love how he's so
So
quiet.
crazy, and then the crazy looking face on it.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Like kind of a human face. I like the big boar though too, like the blind boar. Like
Yeah.
It's
If I can't pick Cool, and I won't, I already mentioned he is my favorite, but I think I'll pick the apes. I loved the apes.
Yeah.
The way they sounded and the way they looked was really cool.
yeah, their design, like the first time, I think it's the first time I see them, but like they all just have like the lines going down or whatever. Like that was like just kind of cool animation technique to separate those apes from the background. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Something I really liked about this movie too was like with the apes, with the wolves, with everyone, because we were talking about the nuances between like not being totally evil, not being totally good. They're just trying to work it out. Like I think that's one of the things I really appreciate about the movie is just like not drawing the characters with that broad brush.
Right.
It's just understanding that yes, there are nuances with people, and you live long enough, you become the villain. You know,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
just like Batman.
It always comes back to Batman.
It always comes back to Batman.
Shout out our pet. Like and subscribe.
Dude, that new trailer.
Yeah.
Play the new trailer. I love Miyazaki's movies. I hope you watch Princess Mononoke, or if you've seen it, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening either way. It was great to have Josh back.
Always.
Thank you for having me.
Making it many more times.
And in person, fellas, we did it.
Yeah,
Finally.
that's fun.
Season 2.
Season 2.
This is a good season so far.
I love it.
Word.
Awesome.
Cool. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
I'm blind! No! I can see! It's a miracle! Another perfect landing. No worries. I'm okay. Thank you for caring. It's just a few bruises. Nobody cares about me.
I do, Batman.
You sure?
I'm positive.
Only fools are positive.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
I fell for it. I should have known.